Oh, I didn't set the stream title. There we go. Okay. Yep. It looks like we got title captions working. Yeah. All right. Cool. Maybe. Hide closed caption text. Testing. Testing. So I can see it in the test screen, but I can't see it in my own video. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's working. All right, we got captions. Okay, so we're getting started here. We're going to try something a little new this week. Ahmed and I are both going to be presenting, so I've got my screen here to work on some GWT bugs, and we've got his screen. He's got some Domino UI stuff currently running over here. We've had a weird uptick in community involvement. I don't know what's going on, but I love it. We have some bugs to fix in GWT itself. I guess I gotta say GWT. Oh, it read Domino UI. Look at that, it captioned it properly, capitalized and everything. Anyway, it knows what GWT is, but I don't think it knows what GWT is. Well, we'll keep playing with it. Anyway, there's a few fixes in GWT itself. There's been some discussion in the Jackal mailing list, or the discussion system. And yeah, I don't know. Unrelated, before we get too far into this, Justin, have you heard about Docker's big change? You missed it. Okay. So they put out a blog post saying that in a month, any organizations are going to get deleted unless they start paying, even public organizations who host images with them. And in a month, they will remove them all and give you one more month to start paying to get access to your stuff back. Otherwise, it's just gone. And what they're telling you instead to do is everyone needs to run their own repositories. So it's like if Maven Central just said, oh, I'm sorry, it costs too much to run Maven Central. So instead, everyone needs to run their own Maven repository, and we'll just link it from one place on the internet. Docker Hub, yep. Docker Hub is going away except for individual accounts and paying organizations. But even open source stuff is going to disappear. I think you need to be just a little louder for this to work. Harper? No. Oh, yeah? Like Harper? Harbor, got it, okay. Nope, that's not it. Hang on. Oh. GoHarbor.io. Oh, it is this one, okay. So they did put a link in their discussion about this to say, hey, here's how you can install your own using Docker's official stuff. And I know that technically our repo server, our Artifactory, can host Docker images also. I mean, we don't host any, so it doesn't matter for us directly, but we use a bunch. Like this isn't a Docker repository that JFrog themselves puts together, but it's open source, so everybody uses it. Okay. And it's pretty good? You've been happy with this? Okay, okay. Oh, it says, oh, we can't hear Ahmed. Oh, no, did I leave you muted? Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I left you muted. I'm a jerk. Try that again, Ahmed. Just say something. I'm really sorry about this. So he's been telling me about Harvard and telling me that he's used it in a past company.
Yeah, and it's just a repository. You can just browse what images you have there. You can apply some scanning. versioning. You can host different things there, I think.
Does it work like a proxy too to say, hey, I'm using these things, go download them from these other places?
Just like Docker Hub, you just
Okay, cool.
do Docker pull and Docker push, things like that, same commands.
Okay.
It's mostly like when you use Git with GitHub or with GitLab, it's still
Mm-hmm.
Git. Yeah, so it's still the same thing.
Have you used the GitHub repo server?
Nope, no, not yet.
Okay, so it's a pretty handy way to just deploy your packages. Oops, apparently that is not the right way to do this because it says that I'm getting redirected, and my browser says no, we're not going to do that. Anyway, let me just show you how Deephaven uses this real quick. There's stuff that's built into the GitHub builds, and we deploy packages, and the packages show up as apparently we have no packages. Well, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
What the heck? Where did they go?
Containers, there should be the containers or Dockers, okay.
But it says when I search for all, there's nothing left. But this other page showed that there were a whole bunch because every release, and we build another one every night too. It says 17 packages. There's 20, and then it says 17. I don't know why they're different.
Yeah, 17 is here, 17 here.
Okay. Anyway, it's
Okay,
supposed to be all
20.
at GH GitHub content repo or repo contain. I can't remember what it is. It's one of these irritating acronyms that you can then do Docker pulls from. And it's supposed to list all these things here. I wonder if GitHub's having a bit of an outage.
Is it supposed to be visible for everyone?
Yeah, packages is out right now. It's not working. You can't load packages. It has not been a good week in tech, has it? Between
Okay,
banks
let's start.
exploding and
Okay,
GitHub
let's
blowing up.
install Harbor locally.
Right, exactly. I mean, I've got all my images locally that I've been building stuff off of, but oh well. Anyway, that's the idea. That's what you would be able to see if it was working. If GitHub was up, you would see a whole bunch of packages here. There's a little, Git pull link that they give you here. So they're basically just giving the market to GitHub or other providers who already exist and saying, no, we don't want anything to do with this anymore. Go host it somewhere else. And I get the point that some people just upload tons and tons of garbage or tons and tons of old images.
That's right.
But at the same time, I mean, there's a way to fix these things, and that way is not just delete everyone's stuff. So
Well, it could grow really into a very big chunk of containers, because I think even in the company where I was working, they had a policy. They will only keep releases and the last five, let's say, tags. That's all. And
the 5 most recent tags, or
yes,
the 5 things the tag was previously
no,
applied to.
no, the last five push tags. So if it's not a release, if you push a tag and someone else push a tag, it could override yours.
Right.
Yeah.
That
So
I think that makes sense.
only,
I mean, saying we only keep so
yeah,
many.
yeah. You
Deephaven
don't
does
need
have this funny little thing that we do to make sure nobody changes stuff. Like if you change a tag, which first of all, I mean, this is just another thing I want to whine about Docker. Why can the tags be moved? Why can you move a tag to point at something else? If you version something, why would you move that version to something else? It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, actually, yeah. There was the tag is actually the image was tagged by the commit message or commit hash. Sorry, and actually you could just from your machine directly, if there's something that you need to test and there you need to push an image directly from your from currently local copy of the code, you can just use I think we were using Maven GIB plugin. This can just create a Docker for you right away from the Maven project, and you could just push the image to the harbor, go to the Kubernetes, and change the deployment just to reference this image, and it works. Okay, but you don't care after you trace the issue or whatever. You don't care what happens to the image, so it's okay if it's deleted or something like that.
Right. Right.
It's not a release anyway.
Yeah, we have a similar setup. See if I can find it real quick. I don't fully understand how this part works, but there is a piece that will build and deploy images using Crane. And Crane is a build tool that will, it helps us to be able to create cross-platform images because we want to create not only for x86, but also for ARM. Just because there's a lot more ARM servers out there, and of course, Apple's got a bunch of ARM hardware. I mean, you have to run Linux to be able to run Docker, so you have Linux and a VM on your ARM laptop. But but it does run pretty well once we're doing that. I don't
Yeah.
let's see Docker metadata server. We specify GHCR, which is I guess going to be failing now, and then we basically say, hey, it's going to be a bleeding edge build. You know, use it or don't use it.
Okay.
Anyway, so all right, we got a couple people here now. Should we get started rather than continuing to whine about other technology problems? So we've
Yeah.
had a bunch of GWT contributions lately. I have one here that I've been working on for a long time that you reviewed, and this is the documentation cleanup stuff, the doc tool update.
Yes. Right.
If I back up a little bit, we've got the main commit here. And the basic idea for this was we were saying there's all these taglets that are used to generate GWT docs. GWTproject.org, JavaDoc, latest.
Yeah. I
So,
remember. I remember. I had two comments on this. I
yep,
think
you did, and I
there
fixed
was
them,
a
I think.
broken link. Yeah, there was a broken link, and the hint or something like that was trimmed, I guess.
Yep, it only captured the first line of it. And the
Yeah.
fix that I made for that, because that was interesting. I've never used doctree before, or the what do we call it? The AST tree or tree AST? That's probably not the name. We'll find it in a minute. Build tools, doc tool. So the tip and the examples, I think, were both broken. And I had to rewrite this here, which originally just said take this doc tree and return the first element in it. Does it show the differences here from the two different commits I made? Yeah, it does. Cool. Read non-text nodes from a tag as well. So the problem was I had some HTML tag in there, and by only reading the first text node, it stopped when it hit that HTML. So instead, I made a visitor here that says, okay, when you find any element starting, then we have to emit that element, which means, you know, open, close around the tag. We have to say what attributes does it have, put a space between the attributes. So I had to add this visitor to go and to grab these things. And then I had to also wrap up entities. So we don't actually have anything using entities, HTML entities, but it was still important to add that.
Okay.
And this was much easier than the old one, but then again, the old one was an internal API to the JRE that, hey there, thanks for following Rapid Pact. This is not what we're usually talking about. It's just we're getting a little distracted here. Anyway, the new API has an actual visitor, and it hooks into, let me see if I can find it here. The Docklet environment looks a lot like our processing environment. You've got access to elements. You've got access to types, the type utils. And there's also, let's see, doc trees, which are still com.sun, but they're considered a public API now. And then there's also trees. I think you have played with trees a little bit, Ahmed, and some other stuff. Do I remember that right?
Sorry. You had your I couldn't hear you.
The
The
trees.
voice disappeared.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Trees. I think you played with the tree API in Java.
Yeah. Not that much, I think.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah,
know
not
you've
not
got
that
some
much.
code in your example generator that needs to read source HTML, and this little snippet here might be interesting for that because it actually takes a element, a annotation processor element, and given that
Yeah.
element, you can grab the tree, and given the tree, you can actually look up the content itself, and you can even grab a method from a class or an inner class or a field and grab only its source out of the whole class file. Otherwise, you can actually say, give
Okay.
me the compilation unit, and then give me the source file and read it. And once you've got that reader, you can go ahead and grab the content out of that file.
Hmm.
But you can go further and say, given this element within that class, find the start position and then read content. So this has been vaguely rewritten, but it's still pretty much the old original code. So
Okay. You mean my example in the demo, or
yes, in
the
the
one
Domino
in?
UI demo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a very long time ago. I don't even remember what I did there.
I think you might have
Let me
added them
go.
as resources, but I just can't remember how that worked.
Yeah, it's a browser anyway, so I can. Luckily, I already have the project
Let
there
me put yours down.
open.
But anyway, this is the code that now lets Javadoc be generated using that.
Yeah,
And I was thinking it might make sense to use this for the TypeScript work we've been doing to generate TypeScript out of.
yeah. That sound interesting. Yeah. We can fix actually the Java doc to not just
Right.
be a simple copy of what we have in the Java code. Okay, so block statement, I think if a present method declaration, where do I get this from?
It looks like it's
Yeah,
from that visitor, the compilation unit. Okay, so you're getting the compilation unit also.
yeah, parser. I have a parser, Java parser. I'm using something called Java
Oh,
parser
okay.
for this one. Yeah,
So
it's a
that
little
way,
bit
so it's not
different,
the
I
same
think.
compilation. Sorry.
No, no,
What's the
no. It
package of
seems like
compilation unit there?
this is from GitHub, Java parser something. I'm not sure. I
Yeah, this is
can't
a pretty
remember.
excellent package. Deephaven uses it also. What's the package
Yeah,
of compilation unit? Is that Java parser also?
let me see. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
AST. So
So
this is a
the yeah,
different one, I guess.
yeah. So the one that I've got here, let me just share this again real quick. Compilation unit tree. So this is the tree API, which is from ComSun source tree. Um,
Yeah, I think I used to use that one, but at some point when I migrated to a different Java version, JDK, it caused me some problems. This is why I switched.
it doesn't work in Java 8. It only works in newer versions. But as of Java 9, it is the official API you're allowed to use for this.
Mm, okay,
So
I
I think it's worth
can.
taking a closer look at.
Yeah, let me see if I have something in the history for this. What I used to do. This is not it. Okay, this is different, I think. This was the very old implementation, and this is when I switched to this one. I was doing it completely in a different way, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Mm, so this is method tree, something like, yeah, this is it. Method tree.
Okay, so that is the tree API. I would be really curious to see why that
Yeah.
failed. In the past, I have discouraged, and I think I also discouraged you, but I've discouraged people from using the tree API because it wasn't ComSun, and until Java 9, it wasn't official that yes, this is an API
Yeah.
you can use. And I'm not even sure it worked in regular annotation processors. I think you had to be a compiler plugin to use it. Maybe someone can correct me on
Mm,
that.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Essential Orphe, thanks for joining us. we're playing around with documentation building right now, but we'll get into Java and JavaScript stuff shortly. All right, well, I'm going to switch back over here, if it's okay with you, unless you've got
Yeah.
something else you wanted to
Yeah, sure.
investigate and play with. But feel free to interrupt there. So anyway, this has all been building properly, and everything builds fine, but I found last night that tests fail, and there's a few things that fail as a result of this, and the first one is that in Java 9, there's a new toArray method on collections. So that now there's two methods. There's one that takes an empty array object, or even a full array object. It doesn't matter. It just uses it to clone it. And there's another one now that takes a factory method, a lambda, like what collectors do. But unfortunately, when you just call it with null, which, first of all, this is never going to work, and in fact, the test of this is deliberately catching null pointer exceptions. But we have to tell it which one do we want it to blow up with. Do we want it to blow up with an array, or do we want it to blow up with the factory? And we actually right now want it to blow up with an array, because we don't emulate factories yet, that factory implementation. So we have to specifically say, yes, it's going to be an object array. The only reason you would ever need to pass it in like this, and heckin' mad VHE? What is it with today with people following? I hope they're real people, not just random bots trying to get our attention, but still, nice to have you. Anyway, so there's no real use case to pass in null. It's not a bug that we're going to have to fix anybody's stuff, but it is kind of funny that it broke. And then after that, we've got a couple other breakage points that I'm going to address soon because we really want to get this landed. Our tests are failing. There's a couple of them that are failing. The first one that I nailed down, so first of all, we got to get rid of this GC error. But this is just a warning. This doesn't actually break anything. And then it has a startup error in the server because it can't find Jaxby, because this was all removed out of Java after Java 8. So with the Java, what do you call it, JPMS, the module system, whatever we call it, what's the P stand for? Anyway, as part of the modularization,
yeah.
do you remember?
Yeah, no. Java proposal, I think. Java proposal.
Well, it's not a proposal anymore. They said, nope, you have to use it now.
Yeah, I mean, GB thing means
modules.
Java proposal.
JPMS, Java Platform. It's the Java Platform module system.
Okay.
Well, there we go. It was such a good idea, and then nobody used it. Justin's trying to tell us. Oh no, it's not Justin. Jigsaw. Yeah, Jigsaw. But nobody calls it Jigsaw anymore. And nobody uses it. All right. So anyway, we got to add this jar back into the class path somehow when we're running as Java 9 or above. And I'm guessing this is going to break all kinds of things because all kinds of servers are going to fail to start up. So I need to figure out how to get that added. Can't seem to chat on Twitch. Well, GitHub's down. Maybe Twitch is too. Twitch is Amazon, right? I'm sure they don't share that much. Maybe our 3 random new people are trying to chat with us too, but can't talk here. Put a quick test message in and see if this is working. Yeah, it looks like it worked. So it might just be you, Justin. All right, well, cool. So I need to figure out what the jar is in here. And the funny thing is, I know I've got a Stack Overflow answer about how to fix this. And about which jar we need to add back in. It was removed from Java, from JDK 11. We don't need to add modules because we're not going to actually use it. Or, oh, maybe it is just add modules. Okay, so if it's already in the JRE, but just not in the default modules, then we need to add it directly.
Yeah,
So
let me
we
check
already have
something.
a thing to say, hey, which version are you running? So let's get the right flag set. We do that for compiling. I don't think we do that for running tests, though. So let's take a quick look here in user build. When we run the test, this compiles the test. So this has extra args we could add here, but we need extra args at runtime for tests. So all of these are going to call GWT JUnit, which is a macro we've defined here. Let's see here. I hate hand. It'll be extra JVM args that we'll add, but not to the test JVM args. It needs to go to the server process itself. Let's see, that will... What is this going to do? This is just going to run some JUnit task. I guess we're going to invoke this in a little bit. Right here, I think. So we got JVM args. We're going to need one more JVM arg to make that work. So let's just try right now fixing... Go ahead, are you talking?
Yeah, I mean, at some point they also moved to Jakarta, right?
Yes, at some point we do have to do that. But
Okay, so it's a two-step migration.
well, okay, so Jakarta is separate because Jakarta is you can actually still use Java 11 and even Java 17 with the old Java X servlet.
Yes.
The request factory stuff we have today, though, I don't know if enough people use it to make it worthwhile moving it to Jakarta. I do have a patch up that shows how we would move to Jakarta for GWT RPC. But I'm not sure if anybody's actually interested in request factory. Nobody's asked about that yet. We have to make a whole different jar for that to work because it's got to have different dependencies and stuff. So replacing GWT servlet and GWT request factory server.
Okay.
So if I run this, it's going to take forever to get this test going, find this out. But maybe I just run this in the background, and then we look at some other code reviews or something.
Okay.
To run the tests, it's the full check, and here's the command that we end up running.
You have to run the whole test, right?
Well, I really only need the request factory suite now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But I am really bad with and, so maybe we can just cobble this together.
But still, you're gonna it's gonna take time, even if you didn't run request factory, right?
Yeah. So, but let's try it. Let's try it.
Okay.
What if we check the README and say how to run the tests? It says if you want to run the web tests, we can say cd user and test web HTML unit. And then there's a specific includes we can use here, right? So that's like dgwt junit test case includes, but it's going to be with the slashes instead of dots.
Well, I know I asked this before, but I'm not sure. Is it a huge effort to switch from Ant to Maven, at least?
It is an enormous
Yeah.
pain. So,
Okay.
I mean, if anybody's interested, we can dig into that a little bit. I've actually got a script that automates the transition part of it. Because the problem is, it didn't work properly. It failed, crashed. Well, let's look at that real quick. Then let's talk about that because that's a super fun topic that I hate. But it's a really good idea. Gradle might be better the more I think about it. But the problem is it's going to be a dirty hack no matter how we do it because there's circular dependencies between dev and user. Okay, so let's look at test. Which one? Cannot unrecognized option. Oh, it's because I'm running Java 8, right? Okay, so we got to figure out how to make this work in 8 later on. That's not right now's problem. Right now's problem is just to It's not going to use that. It's going to use this other one. Right now, his problem is just to see does the test run at all when I switch to Java 11. Do I have the script in here? No, I don't. Still failed, crashed. Unrecognized option. Must not be running the right JRE still? I'm cleaning it that way we can get rid of the old files. Because I want to see only the new ones so that it says... Thanks, Justin. Glad you like them. I want to see only the new ones because I want to make sure that it says which JRE it was actually using. So there's 3,700 files in user, right, that we got to compile to do anything. And some of these files are needed by dev.
Okay.
And I think if we break this open, we can see where it starts pulling from dev, because I think it actually copies some files from dev. I mean, because obviously, in order to build user, you need dev. You can't test the user code without a compiler to test it with. That makes sense. But it has to make sure that, so it makes sure that dev is built, and if we look then in dev, I think it has to copy certain files from user. There's something silly like that that has to happen. Yeah, so it says, in order to compile dev, first of all, include all of user sources. So dev includes dev sources and user sources, and then it builds dev. And then user builds, again, it builds all of user sources, which depends on dev. So these crazy dependencies are just no good. It only needs a couple of things. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, does this mean it compiles the sources twice?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it needs them in both places. Because dev depends on user, and user depends on dev.
Do we know where this dependency goes on, or it's
we do, and
like...
if you want to play with that, that's more fun, and it might be more fun for you too. I've got this really old... Oh no, I don't think I called it that. I think I called it... Is that the branch? Yeah. Alright, so this is a super old branch. It's going to need a minute to run. So I sort of went off of the...
With refactor or something?
Yeah, exactly. But it's also WTF, because what the factor was going on here. And along the way, I have done a whole bunch of stuff like fix cyclical dependencies inside of GWT modules, because those are... this predates when we were starting to factor out all those things. GWT modules. Oh, it's trying really hard to figure out what GWT might be. GWT is GWT. Let's see what it says about that. So what this all boils down to, though, is this restructure.sh script that I wrote, which says, okay, sometimes we got to move things, and this does it in Git. That way you can just run the command, and it does one big rebuild, and that way you can rebase this on top of latest GWT, and it will correctly run. And then it's got a different version called move Java, where if you've assigned origin and target, which is gross because it should be arguments, but I'm bad at bash. This should be written in some other language for sure. This is very, very old. I started it, what's that, 8 years ago? Anyway, I made a new directory and said, okay, let's put some of our tools in there first. JS interop used to be inside of GWT, so this probably doesn't need to happen anymore. And it just says, okay, go ahead and use that move command to relocate all of that stuff. Java emulation. So this makes a new package. So instead of just making, JS interop, GWT user and GWT dev, because GWT user sort of depends on GWT dev. I broke it into much smaller modules. One for Java emulation, one for core, and core is just the stuff that's pretty much in the new GWT core module. And I used to have entry point, but the problem is entry point really isn't a core thing. I'm not sure if we need to have it there. I can't remember what all this means now. It's been a very long time.
Yeah.
Then we've got individual other dependencies that have to go in core because things in core depend on them. So they're like more core than core, or whatever that means. So these are really super awesome core things that have to be there for it to work properly. And I just basically name each of these classes. Once that's done, we move to lang.
Okay.
And lang is parts of GWT that make it able to compile Java, but not code you're supposed to use yourself. And for some reason, sometimes they put those in super, and sometimes they put them in core, and sometimes they put them in dev, and sometimes they put them in, this JJS. So we have to go through and grab each of those, and then there's one more stray file that has to be grabbed, rather than these whole directories that we move. And this just says move this one particular file. Stack trace creator depends on array helper, and with broken loop, so what that means is after we break a cyclical dependency there, it can also move in here. So array helper is part of core, but stack trace creator is part of lang. So lang depends on core. And then utils depends on lang and core. So it's another, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't. This is utils for the compiler, generator, and linkers. So we're now out of the compiler itself. I'm sorry, out of the compiled code itself and into the compiler. We've got these lovely classes like utils, and util and utility, and don't forget the util package. I'm sure these are very useful utilities that just can't be named very well. So once you pick up all these are things that are going to be depended on separately by the compiler and other stuff. And then I got stuck here because everything depends on these. And we have to have some code gen that replaces these things. Linkers and generators, I put into one single project. It's called ext, because in some places in the code, they call it ext. Just to mean this is sort of external compiler APIs. So this is all gone anyway, so all this should be deprecated anyway if we ever merge this. But it works. And then we recognize these kinds of files that have to go in there. So we still haven't gotten to the compiler, and we still haven't gotten to any of the, what do you call it? The user code, the modules. So my hunch is at this point, once we get to modules, we're just going to say, whatever, it's a giant ball of problem and we're not going to pay attention to it. Please switch to the new modules that we're using anyway. So we scroll past all this stuff, and then we're still in there. Okay, now linkers has got something specific. I don't know why I have linkers instead of generators. Do I have a separate generators? Maybe not. I'm not sure why there's linkers versus generators. This might be... Okay, so what it is that ext is the utility code that all generators and linkers will need to do their job. And then the linkers package is these are linkers that you need to use for a standard GWT build. But if you don't want a standard GWT build, you can always make your own linkers and throw this away. So that's how that comes together.
Okay, so this only works to break the dependencies, right?
This, let me just look at this list.
Then later, another step is needed to actually migrate to another build tool, right?
This actually does that. So that's part of the fun here. Most of these changes modify the restructured diff. Each one of these commits, most of them modify restructure little by little. So these different commits are me keeping track of what new hack I had to add to tease apart this big mess. But if you see it, I'm also adding palms as I go. So each one of these will
Yeah,
get a palm, and they will declare the relationships between these different modules as we go along. And we've
I
got things
see.
like these, all these tools, which are, I think, I'm not sure if they even exist anymore. Um, yeah, there's a ton of these things. There's a ton of palms. And there's some dead code that I'm sure I've deleted separately in latest GWT that we're going to have to go through and fix up. So this assumes the palms are already in place and rewrites all the Java only by moving it, by doing these git move commands, because as long as you have no new dependencies in your project, those palms are actually still accurate today, 7 years later. Now, that's not true. We do have some new dependencies, so we just need to update those and then they'll work. But the main point is we're
Okay.
only halfway through and we haven't even started the compiler, which means we haven't even started all the GWT modules. And this came from before we were trying to refactor out the GWT modules into their own Jackal compatible projects. So
Yeah,
dev
but at the
mode.
end,
Mhm.
yeah, but at the end we still do a new good versions and releases. We do bug fixes, uh, uh, and some updates, right?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't quite follow the
Yeah,
logic.
I mean, even though we did the GWT modules for people to migrate to, we are still doing patches and update bug fixes to GWT, and we are releasing new versions.
Right, absolutely. But we're not
So
very often changing GWT user itself.
yeah,
We're leaving most of those pieces the way they are. Yes.
yeah.
So dev mode, check for updates, which we should delete anyway. Images,
So
dev mode. JUnit 3 package. I specifically named it because someday we want JUnit 4. The
okay,
compiler itself,
so
finally.
so I have another question here.
Go for it.
So when we do a fix for GWT itself here, right, in here,
Mm-hmm.
uh, do we sometimes need to do this also in the migrated modules? Are
Right,
we
good
following
question.
there?
Let me switch back here. So the way this is supposed to work is that, let's first of all look to see where it diverges from main. Is that where it diverges? That's pretty close. So there are changes in Java files, but there's very few Java files, and there's no rearrange Java files. You don't see any move commands in here. It's mostly just delete a bunch of stuff and create a bunch of POMs and tweak a bunch of XML files. So if we look at the diff itself, get rid of that stat so we can see them file by file, it is rearranging a couple of methods which allow us to break cyclical dependencies. So it used to be that properties util was a cyclical dependency between, and I can't even tell you what it is now, between one module and another module. And what I probably found was that this was only ever used from this one class, so I moved it into this class. And possibly it's
Okay.
used by other classes in the same project. So as long as these changes rebase cleanly, what you're supposed to do is check this out as long as it's a work in progress, and then run restructure. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Run restructure, and let me just show you one more thing about how this whole script is structured. It goes into each thing, it does a Maven install, and then it goes back again to the main directory, and then it builds a new project. It goes in and it builds it, and then it goes out, and it builds the entire tree of projects every single time it makes any change. So we have no changes right now. It's just the script itself that makes everything work. It's the new POM files, and it's a little bit of cleanup things we should commit separately. So if I run this, and this hasn't been run in 7 years, so please forgive me if it blows up,
It's okay.
but it's going to, oh, it
Yes.
failed. It can't read artifact for JS interop. Can't find artifact. Quit pom. There's supposed to be a root pom. Did we miss that one? Com Google quit 1.0 snapshot. Did it not install that? Did not find artifact. Com Google quit pom 1.0 snapshot. It got lost somehow. I was hoping to get a lot further before it blew up. So we're going to just hack this in right now, just to get it bootstrapped. There we go. It's probably going to fail because I'm probably halfway through some migration when I gave up and I never touched it again. Up here and then restructure. So this script is doing git rm and git add on every single Java file across the whole project. That way you can make one single commit that contains every moved Java file. But hopefully they're only being moved and not changed. That's the goal. That this is just a giant rearrange, reshuffle, put things into their own directories, and that we can separate that from the POM creation and from the untangling of dependencies. So the untangling gets committed first. It's going a lot better this time. The untangling goes first. Then the POMs and this change go in together. And the person who reviews this change with the POMs, they would see created 15 POMs or 20 POMs and moved a bunch of files, but didn't delete any files. Okay, so then it blew up again, probably because we're running Java 11 right now. So every time you do this, you got to reset hard to start over.
Yeah.
Because it is expecting that it only runs once. So we're back on Java 8.
Yes.
Once we rebase this, it'll be much easier, because rebase will get rid of those Java 8 problems, or Java 9 problems. Let's give it one more try. It should get slightly further this time, and that will actually be nearly as far as I ever got. Now, this only builds jars. I don't know if they work, but it builds them. And it definitely does not run any tests. So no tests will work. All we know is that as rearranged like this, the code compiles correctly. The compiler compiles correctly.
Okay.
So, and it is a pretty big project at that point. I think we're about as far as when it blew up last time. So this is a pretty big project here, 900 files, but it's still a quarter of the size of what it used to be. So the builds are much faster. So inside of dev now, we have multiple other modules. The compiler's been broken apart into dev mode and into the GWT runner, and then request factory blew up, and I don't care. We're not gonna fix that one too. Request factory is a work in progress. It isn't done yet.
Okay.
So the tool stuff got rearranged into here. Each one has its own POM now, so it generates a apparently working jar. We're gonna have to test this out to see if it works. I don't think we want to deploy those tools. Linkers, there's just one single jar that contains all the linkers. So when you depend on GWT dev, what you actually depend on is some jar that pulls in compiler, dev mode, JUnit, and linkers, and then whatever other transitive dependencies those things have. And if you depend on GWT user, well, we don't have user yet. We have a POM for user, but it doesn't do anything. It depends on core, it depends on linkers, it depends on servlet stuff, closure style sheets, Java validation, AC4J, ICU4J, emulation. So each of the specific dependencies we need to make it work. So it still would be individual. You just add these 3 dependencies, but the jars are much, much smaller that way.
Okay, so what is the remaining part in this one?
Who knows? Compiler? I haven't touched it in 7 years. It took me months to get this far. It seems like a good idea, but we can't actually run any tests yet, and the compiler can't actually run to do anything yet. But it seems like a good idea, so I think we're on the right track. It's just a question of, what do we actually focus our time on? And my thinking was, in the short term, it makes more sense to continue to improve, individual bugs in Git because it won't break this. The Jackal Maven plugin because we want to keep up with upstream Jackal, and the modularization because as we can make those work in Jackal, we can also drop old browsers and stop caring about those problems.
Okay.
So that's my thinking anyway. And then if we look at this diff, this is
Well,
awful. So I'm just going to do a diff stat.
it's something off topic,
Yeah.
but I think that Dimitri some time ago asked if we can make the Jackal Maven plugin build on refresh instead of auto detect, or with some sort of any way to just manually trigger it instead of making it auto, because I think I face the same issue that he mentioned, because it's auto builds. Sometimes the CPU peaks, and it just freezes the whole machine
Yeah,
for a
the
few
good news is
seconds.
that if it detects another change, it will cancel the current build. But the problem is for things like CLDR, it's already so big that there's no reasonable way to stop it. You can't stop it once it's started.
Yeah,
It can only stop later work. So the real
yeah,
fix for that is we need CLDR to be small. That way it can actually stop in a reasonable amount of time. Or once you're
hmm
into one of the big bundles, there's nothing you can do once it's going because you can't interrupt the build. You can control C the build at least at this point. We should have good detection for control C and then running again.
yeah.
Um,
I mean for while you are doing the development,
right, absolutely, yeah.
you just change a class,
And if you're
and
not
for
done
some
changing,
reason
why
it
make the
peaks.
compiler do work yet? Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
The problem is when you do that, you have to have the compiler run a web server, and the web server needs to listen
yeah,
to when does the user actually restart. So this breaks anyone running Node and running JavaScript that they're integrating with some other JavaScript or TypeScript with their Java. This breaks if they are running npm to bundle your JavaScript with their own stuff. Um, it breaks with proxies. So we played with, I don't know if you
hmm
saw this, but I was playing with GitHub's code spaces, and
yeah,
super dev mode is super finicky about which port
yeah,
does it
yeah.
connect to. And once you put it through a proxy, it doesn't understand anything. So you have to tell it all about how proxies should work and things like that. And that's why even in Quit 2, we were hoping to get rid of that. Thomas started a project doing that. I think he's got it in his own GitHub repo.
Okay, is it possible to do something like when you are in TJ and you want to actually build a single class or something like that? You can just do Control Shift F9 or something like that, and it will just do the build.
Yeah, yeah. Or we could just have in the terminal, if you just hit like the space bar or the enter key, have it accept
Yeah,
that as a please pause building. Okay, please resume building. Or
yeah,
maybe you type the word stop or manual, or there's a manual mode, and every time you hit enter, then it does a
yeah,
build. Yeah, definitely, definitely. The watch
yeah,
mode
something
that
like that.
exists there. Yeah, let's take a look at how that works. That's as good of a thing as anything. I mean, we got to get back to this stuff eventually, but nobody's yelling at us in chat saying, "Hey, fix my bug" or "Hey, merge my pull request." So I'm gonna go play with this real quick. The watch mode is totally separate from the compiler, and the watch mode just keeps an eye on changes and asks the compiler rather than telling it, "Hey, would you start compiling this thing instead?" So here's Watch Mojo, and if you're not a Maven person, a Mojo is a Maven Mojo. So when you run Jackal :watch, this is the class it runs. All of your configuration options get assigned to these fields, and then execute eventually gets run. And it first has to build its idea about what your project is going to be. It has to create the directory where it's going to dump stuff. That way you can start Jetty right away. It figures out what the class path it's going to need. It starts creating some objects like a disk cache, which you always need to build. It adds a shutdown hook. That way if you hit Control C, it can clean up after itself. It makes a scheduler. And then finally, It looks at your projects, at your whole reactor, and it walks your whole project and finds all the projects that might matter for GWT. And then it builds a watch service. And the watch service is watch all of those projects that have sources mapped, and here's how you find their source roots. So it's a little hard to read in this Fluent style, but it's watch the projects that exist, only the ones that have sources mapped. So in other words, don't watch jars in my M2 directory because we can't change them anyway. And then grab their source roots, and for each one of those, watch that source root for a change. And watch itself is going to start a new thread to get that work done. And then it just sleeps. It's 24-hour watch, and then it sleeps right now because we haven't really figured out what the real logic should be here. So this one piece here does all the watching. And this itself is pretty simple too. This is
Okay.
log to say we're going to watch. For each one of those paths we're going to watch, make a mapping of it. 2 mappings of it, actually. No, sorry, just one matching. Path to project. That way, if a path changes, we know which project to update. Start a directory watcher, and the directory watcher has a listener. So right now, this is the thing here that says, hey, this thing changed, go and update it. But instead, if you were waiting for a keystroke or something, update would maybe be in queue this change instead. And then we have to build for the first time. For the very first build, we have to say, hey, mark everything is added newly and rebuild every single project. So we mark them all, then we say, okay, request the build, and then we just wait for it. And the update command here looks at whatever changed and asks the service to mark a file as created, modified, delete, or hey, something went wrong, and I am not able to keep track. And then this is the part that says actually start the build. It's the same thing we did up there. So I've marked all the changes that matter.
Okay, so here, right?
So you could delay this.
Yeah, I mean, we could just record what is being changed, whatever. Okay, and here we could check if it's running in manual mode or in auto mode. And if it's auto mode, you just do the same thing. If it's manual mode, you will stop until I do the command that will do build queue.request build, whatever it is.
Right. And request build itself is pretty easy. It's going to set a flag anyway, and it debounces this to say wait for a moment before we set it anyway. So if it was false and it's now true, then wait 100 milliseconds for other changes to happen, and then go ahead and start it. And timer elapses when it says, okay, now start it. And this is the logic that says, okay, see if we are actually running, otherwise someone else might have started to run this before us, and then mark the build. It's no longer idle, it's now building. If it was already building or canceling, mark it as, hey, we're canceling. And if it's now canceling, actually cancel the build. If it's now building, start the build. And start the build. This is the part that requests a build. So we haven't even gotten to actually beginning the build yet. This is just the threading to make sure that we do this. We don't do this concurrently. We don't have 2 builds running concurrently. So this is the part that says, hey, please stop the old build and start the new one. And that is through this thing here. If there's a previous build, block until that is finished. But we've already canceled it, so that should be pretty quick. It's only going to be whatever tasks are running this moment that are going to keep running. So we don't need to get into here, because this is the actual run the build part. And this class, this watch service, has this build queue that will already keep track of, are we building or are we not building right now? So there's an enum for this that it internally will keep track of. We don't need to track that. We just say, trigger these changes, and then when you're ready, request the build. So if you just put a delay in here, just don't request build right away, that should be the end of that.
Okay.
So yeah, that should be pretty straightforward. The question now is, how do you introduce that to make it easy for the user? Do we have like some port open that any hit to that port at all triggers this, and you just have to have one extra little JavaScript call at the beginning of your project to say, hey, try to rebuild and see if that works? Or do you just have a command so that when you run Maven Jackal watch, you hit enter when you're ready for a rebuild? Or maybe you just want to make this delay configurable. If nobody has built in 10 seconds, go ahead and rebuild. There's been a delay for 10 seconds. This isn't quite right because this doesn't wait for existing builds to finish. This is just waiting for any other changes that are going to happen.
Okay.
And this only runs once. So if you call request build, and then you call request build again 5 seconds later, and then 5 seconds later you call it again, it's only going to pay attention to the first call and make one timer scheduled to run that much later. And yeah, this should be parameterized. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, could be parameterized. I wanted to say that. Yeah, cool.
All right, I'm going to close this for now. Get back to the GWT stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing I was showing right here is that this is moving all these files, and except for this DS store crap, because believe it or not, I was on a Mac like 8 years ago when I was writing this originally. I was still working for Sencha. You can see that there's no changes to all these files. All of these Java files are completely unchanged as part
They are
of...
just moved.
Exactly. So that should make the commit super easy to read and be clear that we're not breaking anything. There's no... As long as the tests still run, but of course the tests don't run yet. So if we really wanted to have a bad day, we could try and merge this up to main. Not reset, that'd be terrible. Merge. But I'm certain this is going to fail for all kinds of ways. So we're not going to do that today.
Yeah.
That's its own like multi-hour project to get this updated. So let's switch back to this test failure thing and see if we can figure out what we need to do to get this here to build again and to have the test work. So it should have said which JVM it's using. Caused an error, and the error is assertion error. The forked JVM exited abnormally because of the flags were wrong. So where does it say the Java version in here? So source version is Java 8, because we're not changing that. We're just supporting running on a newer compiler. And it says Java home is 11. So maybe I typoed something? Let's not rule that out. We need a stash pop here, because I had uncommitted changes. We'll get that stuff back. Let's see what else says Java 8 in here. So error prone is a Java 9 build. And the JVM version is 11. So it is the right version of Java. We have to run the test to get this to fail again. But this doesn't take long, we figured out now. And then we'll see what it was that I typoed when I was trying to specify in here that we want add modules. So something about that is wrong. So add modules is supposed to be just add modules and then module names. Did we do the syntax wrong here? You say this equals this, is that the problem? We don't want to add opens, because we're using the ones that are built in. This is going to take a little while, because I forgot that I did a clean. I'm wondering if I added it to the wrong part of the command line, the wrong JVM arg. This should run it on, let's see, where is this defined here? This must be the real JUnit and not the taskdef we have here. Well, maybe it is. It's the real one. We just added a couple specific class path entries. And even this part was faster in the new build setup. The nice thing about modularizing like that we looked at is that we would be able to modularize for either Maven or Gradle, or even Ant if somebody really cared, or Basil if somebody really cared. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Because the important part is we're just unsnarling those dependencies and just declaring this module now depends on that one. They can now just work properly that way. Really? 1,000 files has taken this long. Did I put it back on Java 8? I bet I didn't. I bet I left it on Java
Yeah.
8 because that's what we needed the old refactor to use.
Yeah. Yeah. You change
It's,
it.
well, at least we'll see what the failure is here when it tries to run them. But that's disappointing. Okay, well, we got this advice here from Jaxby, this Jaxby fix itself. But I need this to work with Java 8. If you try specifying, it'll blow up. You can set any Java 9 options using JDK. Okay, you can add that. It'll silently ignore it. That's a terrible idea. No, you can make any of these work by specifying this. This doesn't work on Java 11. Right, we don't care. And long-term solution is to use this old dependency here for Jakarta XML. Oh, look at this. The add module will no longer work in Java 11 out of the box because in Java 8, 9, 10, they moved it to its own module, but they actually removed it in 11. So this isn't going to work anyway.
Okay.
Why couldn't it give us a helpful error for that instead of just a... Oh, it's still irritating. Okay, so we need to actually add some new dependency to go and grab this. And even though it says Jakarta, it's still Java XML, I guess. Let's go look up what's going to be in this dependency here. We said 232. Contents. There's a little contents button around here somewhere, isn't there? Nope, I don't see it. I'm sure it's here, but I can't see it. I don't really want to pull it down just to see what's in it. Anyway, we are confident that this solution won't work. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this and not try it anymore. I wish I had the old error for exactly what was failing. But probably we need this to be in tools. And what do we call this? The bind API? The missing class is JavaX XML bind. Yeah. And here's a very old copy of that jar we could use. So let's take a look what's inside of tools. Tools is where we keep all of our dependencies because, again, we don't use Maven for dependencies, unfortunately. In GWT. Okay. So what do we call this? This Jaxb? We'll just make a new Jaxb directory. What's the... No, don't do this. I don't want to use the new one, because the new one breaks. I opened a bug like 2 weeks ago on the new one. And it can't find GWT. It just 500s when you search for GWT.
Why?
I don't know. I filed them a bug and they haven't fixed it yet. They just said, "Oh yeah, we'll look into this," and then they haven't. What was it JaxB API? JaxB-API. Yeah. And the package we want is, or the group ID rather, is JavaX XML bind. Right here. So I don't think we want to specifically make this dependency a runtime dependency. This is probably just a compile dependency. And then we will let other people figure that out. So let's do a copy link. You get... That is not what I meant for it to do. That's not helpful at all. Okay.
You also need the source jar for
Yep.
this one?
I put the source jars with it just because I want somebody else to be able to understand what the heck was going on when I did this originally. Just in case they need to rebuild it or something. I figure future me might have a bug someday and want to hunt this down. All right, so it looks like we can just tack on other dependencies here. So if we just say in the lib directory, we have JaxB API 2.3.1.jar. Next, we're going to move to Java 11, of course, because that was dumb last time. We're going to get rid of that clean. And just see if it rebuilds enough to run it on Java 11. See if we get the bug that we got in GitHub CI, GitHub Actions. Well, it's doing something. That's further than it's gotten before. Looks like it's compiling things. Memory serves is around 10-12 seconds. Maybe longer. Does it have multiple modules it's building? Yeah, I guess it's the long one, huh? Oh, it's probably just HTML unit having to run all this is not fast. Yeah, looks okay. We do have an error here, though. And this is the old build. There's a timestamp in here, I think, to figure out when it was running. 1550, yeah, this is 8 minutes ago. So that's the old build. Well, a guaranteed way for it to finish quickly is if I walk away, because I'm out of water. Ahmed, I see you're getting something done. Do you want me to share? Oh, did it finish? It finished. Almost got away with it. All right, so we get this warning on startup. We need to fix that. We got a 500 error still. And then a string index out of bounds. Okay. These might be expected, though, because the test's passed. So this is probably just poking the server and making sure that certain things fail in an expected way. Let's make sure we are running Java 11. Java runtime version was 11. 11.018.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing takes like 40 minutes to build. But maybe I just run the HTML unit version for right now and see how far that gets. And then we need to figure out how to actually add that jar for real. So do you want to take over for a little while here, Ahmed? And just work on something? I could use a little more water and a quick snack.
Yeah.
Okay. Or do you think you're gonna be busy?
Yeah. Uh, I will be busy for some time, I
Okay.
think.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna put
Yeah.
up the be right back screen, and I'll be back in a few
Okay.
minutes. We're gonna let this run because it's gonna have to run all of the suites
Okay. I'll
to make
stop
sure it
sharing my
works.
screen.
Yeah,
My screen too.
yours isn't visible. All right. I'm gonna say be right back to people watching on Twitch. Ahmed and I are gonna talk real quick, and then I'll be back in a few minutes. So I'm almost back, but not quite. I'm just going to leave this up here while it runs. It's more entertaining than a be right back screen, watching it chunk away at this. I've been muted this whole time. Seriously. At least we had captions showing me. It's odd that OBS is no longer showing my desktop audio. Something seems funky there. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's working. Well, that's irritating. I'm going to kill OBS real quick, and I'm going to come back because I don't want to mess with this for any longer than we have to. So I'll be back in 30 seconds.